Christmas is one of the few remaining links to old European cultural tradition, a piquant blend of Christian and pagan beliefs that linger on, almost extinct under the weight of mercantilism. Many homes are still decorated with symbols of Yule, even in countries of the southern hemisphere, where the old midwinter celebration is out of phase. Holly was used in the Roman festival of Saturnalia, celebrated in mid-December, as the plant was sacred to Saturn. It was used to decorate Roman homes, including being hung over the bed to encourage good dreams. Its use was adapted with holly's symbolism Christianized by having the prickles on the leaves represent the crown of thorns placed on Jesus' head at the crucifixion, and the red berries stand for his blood. In Celtic belief, the Holly King ruled half the year, from the summer solstice to the winter solstice. His throne was then usurped by the Oak King for the next 6 months, in an endless cycle. Holly would keep malevolent fairies and witches away from the house. Maidens used to take a sprig to bed with them on Christmas Eve for protection from such evil. Witches were said to dislike holly, as they apparently liked to run along the top of hedges, and the prickly leaves would prevent that. A holly bush planted beside the house protected it from lightning, as holly was sacred to thunder gods. In the past, a boy bedecked in holly leaves and a girl similarly clad in ivy leaves would parade through villages at midwinter to beckon life, as represented by the green leaves, to return to the world. Holly was to be carefully sourced as a decoration, though. If prickly-leaved holly was used, then the man of the house would be in charge for the following year. But if the holly was smooth, then the woman of the house would be dominant. But to ensure a future year of prosperity for the household, then 3 types of holly should be brought inside: prickly, smooth, and variegated. It also should never be brought into the house before Christmas Eve, and must be removed by Epiphany. Mistletoe was a sacred plant of the Celts, which, because it grows on trees and not from the earth, it was thought to hold the essence of their sun god, Taranis. The plant was considered to have mystical healing abilities, and even able to make poisons harmless. An alternative name for mistletoe is All Heal. It was hung up in homes to protect them from evil spirits, and from this it came to represent a house full of love and friendship. From there it became associated with kissing anyone standing under a sprig of mistletoe at Christmas. Irish girls would wear the plant in their hair to gain luck in love. At Christmas, the last decoration to be hanged must be the mistletoe. Today, kisses don't have to cease if a piece of mistletoe is hanging up, but formerly the tradition was that for each kiss, a berry was plucked from the bough, and once all the berries were removed, the kissing ended. Christmas Eve today is considered a time of happiness and expectation, as children await the arrival of Santa and parents toast the season. But in former times, Christmas Eve was as haunted by the otherworld as Halloween. The old northern European midwinter festival of Yule, which was incorporated into Christmas, was a feast of the dead. An Irish belief was that on Christmas Eve the gates of heaven are open, so that anyone who dies that night enters straight to paradise, without having to go through purgatory. The downside of this belief was that people sometimes murdered their relatives on this night, as it was kinder for them to die then. Being born on Christmas Eve was not so lucky. In Scotland, people born that night had the power to see spirits and rule them. One had to be born during the time of the morning sermon in England to have the same power. The Australian Star newspaper in 1906, however, says anyone born on Christmas Day itself would be lucky all their lives. In Silesia, a boy born on Christmas Day must be brought up as a lawyer, otherwise he will become a thief. There's a difference. In other places, those born on the eve were likely to turn into werewolves. It was said in France that Satan sent out evil spirits, especially the ghosts of suicides that night, to lure people into evil and to harm animals. Barns and byres were securely locked to stop the demonic mischief. The French version of Pâques, known as La Folie, was especially drawn to tormenting horses. In some Scandinavian countries, a meal was spread out for ghosts, and the bed left for them to rest upon, while the family of the house slept on straw for the night. Certainly it was safer inside, with the ghosts outside on Christmas Eve, for witches in the north rode around on bears, and werewolves that night. In Norway, a jug of beer and a cake was left out in the snow to placate these supernatural beings. Clearly a forerunner of providing milk and cookies for Santa, and of course a carrot for the reindeer, practised today. Greece was haunted by the Kalikansari, half human, half bestial creatures, which caused trouble during the night, and which could only be exorcised by a priest using holy water on Epiphany. One old English belief was that if you thrashed your garden with a flail, while wearing only a shirt on Christmas Eve, the grass would grow well the next year. In some parts of the country it was early Christmas morning that the thrashing had to be done, including beating the fruit trees. If you had an apple tree and the sun shone through the boughs on Christmas Day, it predicted a bumper crop to come. Young maidens would go and knock on the door of the pigsty. If an old pig grunted in reply, it forecast she would marry an older man, and if a young pig squealed, then she could look forward to a young husband. Another way a wistful young lady could glimpse the future was to go and gather 12 sage leaves on Christmas Eve, and as she picked the last one, she would see her future husband approaching her along the path. In Poland, a young lady could draw a stick at random from the woodpile. If the stick was long, or short, or crooked, etc., so would her husband be. She then could divine his occupation by dripping melted lead into water. The little leaden shapes are then scrutinised to see if they resemble any tools that could give a hint, such as a pair of scissors, meaning a tailor. A more elaborate ritual was mentioned in an article in a newspaper in 1931. The girl had to put on her stockings, inside out, eat an apple, and start combing her hair to obtain a vision of the man she would marry. An unhealthy divination method was for a young lady to take an egg laid by a black hen and hard-boil it, then remove the yolk and replace that with salt. She was to eat this before retiring to bed on Christmas Eve, and she would dream of her future lover. If she forgot or didn't like salt, she could wait until 3 days after Christmas and then refrain from eating, drinking and speaking all evening. Before bed she had to eat a dumb cake, a plain affair of flour, salt and water, and again dreams of her future partner would be conjured. In Slavonic countries too, Christmas Eve was believed to be a particularly good time to seek omens of the future. In Russia, small tokens were dropped into a bowl of water, which was covered by a cloth. People would reach in and withdraw a token, which was then interpreted as to what it predicted. If a girl drew out a gold ring, she said, "I am burying gold," as she hid it in her hand, and then quickly swapped it from hand to hand and passed it off as secretly as possible to another. The girl who rightly guessed who possessed the ring was destined to be the first to marry. Animals are supposed to have the power of speech on Christmas Eve, but it was perilous to listen to what they said. This is thought to originate in pagan beliefs from long ago. A legend was repeated in Brittany about this. An old woman owned a dog and a cat, which she starved. At midnight on Christmas Eve, she overheard the dog say to the cat, "It is time we lost our mistress. She is a regular miser. Tonight the burglars are coming to steal her money, and if she cries out they will break her head." "It will be a good deed," replied the cat. The woman got out of bed in terror to run next door, but on opening the door ran into the burglars. She cried out, and they broke her head. Another tale relates how a German farm servant hid in the barn and listened as the horses spoke to one another. The horses spoke about the hard work coming to them that week, how long and steep the journey to the churchyard was, and how heavy the servant was. Within the week he had died, and the horses pulled his coffin to the grave. In Newfoundland, Canada, the crowing of a cock on Christmas Eve was said to be the bird scaring away evil spirits. In continental Europe, all the cattle are said to kneel at midnight or rise in their stalls to worship Jesus. In northern England, bees were said to hum Christmas hymns. Lighted candles were placed in windows in Scandinavia and Austria, said to light the way for the Christ child in the dark, although they may have originated in remembrance of the Christmas star. Today's sometimes elaborate Christmas light displays are the successor of this custom. In Montenegro, cattle were driven into their stalls beneath lighted candles held up at the entrance, to grant them magical protection. Eating an apple as the 12 chimes ring in the start of Christmas Day was auspicious for the good health of the person eating it for the following year. As another quaint belief was that all water turned to wine at midnight, it was probably wise to be sipping from a glass while chomping on your apple. Bread baked on Christmas Eve in Germany and moistened with Christmas dew would never go mouldy, it was claimed, and provided a cure for snakebite. An old Irish custom was to take a loaf of bread baked for Christmas and cut it into quarters. The housewife would then take each piece and throw one in each direction around the house, so that plenty would come from north, east, south, and west to the house. A very specific superstition stated that between the hours of 10 and 12 on Christmas Eve, you should endeavour to wear next to the skin any garment double sewn with flaxen thread. To do so will provide protection from snakes for the coming year. The Yule log may be a survival of pagan tree worship and rites to invoke the sun to return, or it may simply have evolved from a need to keep warm in the European winter. It was recorded as early as the 16th century, but maybe much earlier in origin. In the Baltic countries, a log would be pulled through the village and set on fire on the winter solstice. Some of the logs were veritable trees cut down and dragged into manor houses to burn in great hearths. Others were simply small stumps. It was considered very unlucky for the fire to go out between Christmas and New Year's. In a time before matches and electricity, keeping a fire going in the hearth in the coldest days of the year could literally be a matter of life or death. A piece of the charred log placed under a bed protected it from fire and lightning. The custom died out as fireplaces grew smaller and have now vanished entirely in all but the oldest homes. Ashes from a Yule log were once treasured for a variety of reasons. They fertilised the ground, rid cattle of vermin, cured toothache, and brought good fortune to the home. Even if one didn't believe in their magical properties, it was bad manners to throw the ashes out on Christmas Day, as it was considered tantamount to throwing ash into the face of Christ. In Burgundy, presents would be hidden under a log. Today, the Yule log remains in spirit in Christmas cakes shaped and decorated to look like logs. A tradition from Somerset and Devon related to the Yule log was the ashen faggot. A bunch of sticks made up of remainders from last year's festivities, with fresh green ones, were held together by 9 bandages and burned in the fireplace. As each bandage snapped, the party, which gathered round singing carols, would take a swig of cider from a large jug. The ritual symbolised the continuity of life, and had an element of augury, in that unmarried women would choose one of the green boughs as theirs, and the first one whose tie snapped would be the first married. A lot of traditions have attached to the Christmas pudding. The plum pudding was originally a porridge or a broth, with raisins, sultanas, ginger and the like, boiled up in a pot and served for breakfast rather than dinner. Christmas puddings should be made of 13 ingredients, 1 each for Jesus and the 12 apostles. An extra ingredient was sometimes added, and that was a leaf of rosemary, as it was the bush Mary dried Jesus' swaddling clothes upon. Everybody in the family must stir it while it is being made, for luck, with a wooden spoon, the wood recalling the wooden manger of baby Jesus. Also, it must be stirred east to west as the sun travels, to commemorate the journey of the 3 wise men out of the east. In 1974, someone in New South Wales wrote to a magazine saying that they tasted as many of their friends' Christmas puddings as possible, as each piece of pudding one ate was said to provide good luck for 1 month of the coming year. The same is said of each mince pie eaten as well. With Christmas cake, it was advised that you save a crumb and place it in your pocket. For as long as it remains, you will have luck. Indeed, any crumbs from the Christmas table were regarded as potent love charms. One ritual which has long fallen into abeyance is the gathering of maidens' purses. Even in 1916 an account mentions that it was all but forgotten. It was attested to in English mining communities that philanthropic benefactors would emulate St. Nicholas by placing money into purses and then surreptitiously throwing them through the open windows of the homes of poor girls, who were soon to be wedded. As they were Christmas gifts and not charity, the girls would not feel slighted in accepting this help to start their married lives. To finish this ramble through Yuletide traditions, here are some other random superstitions. A shirt spun, woven and sewn by a sweet maiden on Christmas Day would make its wearer invulnerable to bullets and swords. But any clothing torn on Christmas Day must not be mended on the day, for it meant you would encounter poverty before the year was over. A handy garden hint is that nothing planted or sown on Christmas Day would die. Money received on Christmas Day brings luck all the year. Draw water from a clear well on Christmas Day, and all who drink it receive good luck. Be very careful in dressing on Christmas Day, for if you wear a garment with a hole in it, your purse will leak money through the year. It was also important to put your arm through the right sleeve and your right foot into your shoes first. If you fail to observe placing the right shoe on first, you are likely to be visited by a bad case of gout. Bad weather on Christmas Day is lucky, but fine weather means a gloomy year ahead. There was an old rhyme which went thus: a warm Christmas, a cold Easter, a light Christmas, a heavy sheaf. A green Christmas makes a fat graveyard. A wind on Christmas Day, trees will bring much fruit. One traditional aspect of the English Christmas long gone is the choice of poultry for the dinner. Today it is more likely to be chicken, turkey or goose. Until 1647, when the Puritans interrupted Christmas by banning it for a decade, peacock was a regular Christmas dish. Another regular food, a favourite emblematic of Yule, was the boar's head, which was a survival of sacrifices once offered to the Norse goddess Freya. It was unlucky to hand a light to a neighbour on Christmas Day in some parts of England. In Scandinavia, the shoes of the members of the household were placed in an orderly row, side by side, as a vow by the family to walk together harmoniously in the year to come. In Worcestershire, it was unlucky to receive new shoes or leather into a house during Christmas week. Before bubble wrap and similar packaging materials, hay would sometimes be used. It was considered lucky to find hay in the kitchen when cooking for Christmas, as hay lined the manger where baby Jesus lay. Finding dried clover amongst the hay meant money was coming to you. In Poland, a wisp of hay was still placed under plates in the 1930s, as reminders of the stable where Jesus was born. Once, little cakes in the shape of cradles with a little pastry baby figure, with currants for eyes, were popular, especially in Germany. And finally, a dirty tablecloth left on the table overnight will make the angels weep. Merry Christmas from the dark corners of history.